It's like morning sickness times 100.
Trigger warning before you go over there. That woman took her life because of severe morning sickness. I don't talk about this a lot here because it doesn't usually fit in with my content, but I'd like to now. I've had hyperemesis with all of my pregnancies. The first time it happened to me, I was 17 and I thought I was gonna die from being pregnant. My college roommate had to track me down one day because I didn't make it to work because I had passed out in my car on the side of the road. A few weeks later, I chose to have an abortion because I couldn't see myself surviving pregnancy. The next time it happened, I was 25 and married and in a much better situation. But I was still bedridden and in and out of the emergency room 2 or 3 times a week. I had an IV hooked up to me 24/7 at home and a little pole that I carried around on wheels. There was a bag attached to this that I had to change out myself that had a solution of some kind that would give me nutrients. I also took an anti-nausea medication that didn't really do anything. I couldn't eat any solid foods for several months. I really didn't sleep more than a couple of hours because I would have to wake up and throw up. When morning came, I would get myself a hot glass of chicken broth, one of those bouillon cubes in a glass of hot water. If that wasn't enough, I could nibble on some Cheerios, but I knew I was going to throw it up later, so I usually didn't. I chewed on ice as much as I could, but that usually came up too. I lost more than 20 pounds in the first trimester. And one day when I was in the hospital, nearing the end of that first trimester, I was begging the doctor to do something to help me. I was very lucky because I got a doctor who said, you know what, I don't normally do this with pregnant women. I don't like to do this, but I'd like to try and give you steroids. I think that saved my life. The next day, I was feeling better and I went home. And although I was still nauseous the rest of my pregnancy, it wasn't near as bad. I wasn't hospitalized and bedridden after that. So 5 years later, when I was pregnant with twins, I was terrified, especially after a visit to the doctor when he thought that it would be comforting to tell me that the sicker I was, the more healthier the babies were. Somehow it was supposed to comfort me to know that if I was dying, my children wouldn't. But then I went through it again. In and out of the ER every other day. I even had to send my 5-year-old kid to live with relatives short term so that I could function. On one of these times that I was in the hospital, I was losing my mind. I was delirious, wasn't getting any sleep, and was throwing up constantly. And I have a vague memory of mumbling to a nurse that I didn't think I cared anymore and that I wanted to die. This was a Catholic hospital. So they immediately sent a priest to talk to me. 20 minutes of guilt and shame later, I still wanted to die. I just wasn't going to tell anybody about it. Until I got an advocate, a volunteer at the hospital who advocates for patients. She had done my intake paperwork for me for the insurance. She came to visit me, and I told her about the time before, about the steroids. And that woman raised hell to get that treatment for me within a day or two. They had steroids for me and I was doing much better. And I survived the rest of that pregnancy. And then I got my tubes tied recently just so that I wouldn't be so terrified of it. No one should have to take their life because they're so sick from a pregnancy. No one should be afraid of pregnancy. We need advocates for pregnant women. We need education about HG and other illnesses. We need to believe women when they say they're in pain. And we need to give women an out if they don't want the pregnancy.